did is the hackers locked up all the medical records. And then they said to the hospital, you pay us, and they won't unlock it. So the hospital is given this choice. Do they put patients at risk, or do they unlock these medical records and make a payment to the hackers? They made a payment to the hackers. So what's going to happen is more of these attacks are going to happen because you're going to put hospitals in these untenable positions where either they put their patients at risk or they make a payment to the hackers to access these records. You have now law firms being attacked. You have police departments being attacked. You have all sorts of folks being attacked, and then the hackers ask for a ransom. So I've worked with other colleagues. We've written letters to the FBI to get more information on this thing known as ransomware. We want to know what steps can be taken to mitigate this. But again, the first step is for all of you who are in the private sector to just increase your cybersecurity defenses and to train your employees to try to be better at not being victims of social engineering. So let me now sort of conclude, now that I've scared you, to conclude on a more positive note. I'm incredibly hopeful for America. We are still the most exceptional, amazing country in the world. And if you look at the other countries in the world, right, who here thinks Europe is ever going to compete with America? Or Russia, right? Russia's GDP is smaller than California's. If you look at China, they have poisoned large tracts of land in that country. They don't have the natural resources, the incredible natural resources that the United States has. Our workers are the most efficient workers in the world. We have amazing innovation. We are poised to win the 21st century. We just need to make sure that we educate our children and retrain our adults to take advantage of the 21st century economy. But I am very hopeful about this country, about California, about the South Bay. So with that, thank you for inviting me and look forward to working with all of you.
Just on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce and the board and our sponsors, we want to present Congressman Lieu with this small token of our appreciation for being with us on this great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you so much, Congressman Lieu, for being with us today and for sharing those insights and for scaring us all half to death on how to deal with our mobile phones, but important information, so thank you. Now I have the honor of inviting Jeff Dill to join me on stage. He's the president of PBF Energy Western Region, and he will be introducing our second keynote speaker, Congresswoman Waters.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I spoke to Mayor Fury yesterday. He asked me to extend his appreciation and regards to both our congressional guests today. I have to say, it really is an absolute privilege and honor to introduce probably one of the most esteemed members of Congress today, Congresswoman Maxine Waters. I can tell you, I personally appreciate and admire some of the bold stances she's taken recently on some of today's really most compelling issues. I could probably talk all afternoon about her many, many accomplishments. Don't worry, I will not do that. I do want to go through some of her accomplishments in Congress and information about her background so you can gain the same appreciation I have for the work she's done and her determination in her office. Congresswoman Maxine Waters is considered by many to be one of the most powerful women in American politics today. She has gained a reputation as a fearless and outspoken advocate for women, children, people of color, and the poor. She was just elected in November 2016 to her 14th term in the U.S. House of Representatives in the 43rd Congressional District of California. She represents a large part of the South Central Los Angeles area, Westchester, Playa del Rey, and Watts, and the unincorporated areas of LA County comprised of Lenox, West Athens, West Carson, Harbor Gateway, and El Camino Village. Her district also includes the diverse cities of Gardena, Hawthorne, Inglewood, Lawndale, Lomita, and the great city of Torrance. An integral member of congressional Democratic leadership, Congresswoman Waters serves as a member of the Steering and Policy Committee. She is also a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus and member and past chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. Prior to Congress, she served for 14 years in the California State Assembly, where she rose to the powerful position of Democratic Caucus Chair. She was responsible for some of the boldest legislation in California, including the largest divestment of state pension funds from South Africa, landmark affirmative action legislation, the nation's first statewide child abuse prevention training program, the prohibition of police strip searches for nonviolent misdemeanors, and the introduction of the nation's first plant closure law. As a national Democratic Party leader, Congresswoman Waters has been highly visible in Democratic Party politics and has served on the Democratic National Committee since 1980. She was a key leader in 5 presidential campaigns. In 2001, she was instrumental in the DNC's creation of the National Development and Voting Rights Institute and the appointment of Mayor Maynard Jackson as its chair. Following the Los Angeles civil unrest in 1992, Congresswoman Waters faced the nation's media and public to interpret the hopelessness and despair in cities across America. Over the years, she has brought many government officials and policymakers to her district to appeal for more resources. Following the unrest, she founded Community Build, the city's grassroots rebuilding project. She has used her skill to shape public policy and deliver the goods. $10 billion in Section 108 loan guarantees to cities for economic and infrastructure development, housing, and small business expansion. $50 million appropriation for Youth Fair Chance program, which established an intensive job and life skills training program for unskilled, unemployed youth, expanded U.S. debt for Africa and other developing nations, created a center for women's veterans, and I can tell you recently she also did remarkable work in ensuring a sustainable future for the Export-Import Bank, which I think is a very important cog in our local economy, given our proximity to foreign trade. Congresswoman Waters was the founding member and former chair of the Out of Iraq Congressional Caucus. Formed in June 2005, the Out of Iraq Congressional Caucus was established to bring into Congress an ongoing debate about the war in Iraq and the administration's justifications for the decision to go to war and to urge the return of U.S. service members and their families as soon as possible. Maxine Waters was born in St. Louis, Missouri. I spent some of my youth in St. Louis, Missouri as well. The 5th of 13 children reared by a single mother. She began working at age 13 in factories and segregated restaurants. After moving to Los Angeles, she worked in garment factories and at the telephone company. She attended Cal State LA. She earned a Bachelor of Arts degree and then began her public service as a teacher and a volunteer coordinator in the Head Start program. She's married to Sidney Williams, the former U.S. ambassador to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. She's the mother of 2 children and 2 grandchildren. Maxine Waters.
I want to thank you, Jeffrey, for that very kind and lengthy introduction. Let me start by thanking Chairman Jonathan Butler, President and CEO Donna Duperon, and the entire Torrance Area Chamber of Commerce for the invitation to address you today. And before I go any further, let me just say to Donna, who's not in the room, where is she? There she is over there. I want to thank you for the friendship you have extended to me since I took this part of my district in the reapportionment. But I really want to thank you for the way that you worked with me to try and save the Ex-Im Bank and the work that the chamber did here to help with that. Would you give Donna Duperon a big round of applause? Ladies and gentlemen, the roles that chambers of commerce play throughout the country are essential, and I have a great appreciation for all of the chambers in our region. I would also like to recognize my friend and colleague, Congressman Ted Lieu, and I want to say to him, thank you for scaring us half to death. He is so knowledgeable about cybersecurity, and we're all going to have to learn more about how we protect ourselves. I know that I say to many of my friends and relatives, we have no more privacy, but we cannot conclude that. We have to conclude that we must take every step possible to have privacy. Now, I'm going to tell you a little story, and I'm going to tell it to you really quick. I was on the floor of Congress a week ago, and I was on the floor because there was a bill that had been put on the floor by Chairman Henselin. I'm the ranking member of the Financial Services Committee, and he's the chair. And they had a bill on the floor. It was about benefit analysis. And basically, that is used by those who are opposed to the SEC and all of the tough work that they have to do to protect investors. So they try to stop them. They try to make it very hard for them to do their job, even though they're our cop on the block. And so I was opposing the benefit analysis bill, and I was talking about Russia, and I was talking a little bit about our president-elect, and I was hacked on the floor of the Congress of the United States. RT came on, the Russian television, and blocked me out and stayed up for 10 minutes. And of course, we started getting all of these calls, and my staff was going wild, and we called C-SPAN because C-SPAN is responsible for our coverage on the floor. They didn't know what had happened. They tried to find out if it was a malfunction of some kind, et cetera. And even today, we don't know what happened. That RT could literally interrupt a speech on the floor of Congress and stay up for 10 minutes. And so, if you're worried about your telephone, worry about everything, because I want you to know we're being hacked, not only on our telephones, but we just experienced it on the floor of Congress. And so it's kind of scary. And I was just told by Jonathan, and asked rather, did I plan on going to Moscow anytime soon? And I didn't have time to tell him, I don't really think so. But anyhow, I thought I'd share that with you since we had gotten such a wonderful lesson from Ted about cybersecurity. Thank you, Ted. Give him another round of applause. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't have to tell you that there's a lot going on in Washington right now. And it's kind of hard to know where to start, but I, like Ted, decided that I was going to focus my remarks in 3 areas. And so you're going to hear more about the ACA and about Obamacare, as it is commonly known, than you're going to want to know about. I'm going to talk about it toward the end of my presentation, but for the next few months, you're going to be hearing all about the ACA and healthcare. It is a huge issue as we determine where this country is going with healthcare. So let me start with housing. The 2008 housing crisis took a painful toll. No, I'm not going to start there. Ted, you got me in trouble. I got to introduce my husband, Ambassador Sidney Williams. I didn't want to leave here and have him say, well, Ted introduced his wife. Why didn't you introduce me? And so let me just go back. The 2008 housing crisis took a painful toll on American families, causing significant and long-term shifts in the housing market as families continue to increasingly delay homeownership and rely on rental housing. But construction of new rental housing, particularly affordable rental housing, is nowhere close to keeping up with the demand, which is driving the cost of renting up. This competition is particularly harmful for low and moderate households, income households, who rely disproportionately on rental housing. Meanwhile, home prices are slowly picking up, which is a sign of our economic recovery, but with the cost of a down payment for a home increasingly and rental costs eating up a larger share of family budgets, it is becoming harder and harder for families to save enough for a down payment. The impacts of these housing challenges nationwide are felt even more acutely here in the greater Los Angeles area. For example, the vacancy rates across the country are very low, illustrating tight housing markets, but they are disproportionately low throughout our entire region. In Torrance, we have a 1.2% home ownership vacancy rate and a 3.1 rental vacancy rate. Palos Verdes home ownership vacancy rate is 0.9% and rental vacancy rate of 1.3. In Redondo Beach, home ownership vacancy rate is 2.2 and rental vacancy rate of 2.9. Manhattan Beach, home ownership vacancy rate of 0.3 and rental vacancy rate of 4.1. In Inglewood, home ownership vacancy rate 0.5 and rental vacancy rate of 1.0. In Hawthorne, home ownership vacancy rate of 0 and rental vacancy rate of 3.1. These statistics highlight the lack of inventory available for renters as well as aspiring homeowners. Evelyn Arnold is in the room, who is one of the leaders in real estate, and she knows exactly what I'm talking about, and she's in Washington very often, walking the halls with her colleagues to get us to deal with some of the ways that we could help people get into home ownership, et cetera, et cetera. As a result of a tight rental market, we're seeing an increasing gap between wages and the cost of renting across our country. But in the greater Los Angeles area, we have the biggest gap of all major areas, meaning that renting in Los Angeles area is becoming more and more unaffordable for the average income household. Nationwide, 49% of renter households are housing cost burdened, meaning that they pay over 30% of their income on rent. In Torrance, 55% of renters are cost burdened. In Palos Verdes, 58% of renters are cost burdened. And in Hawthorne and Inglewood, 65% of renter households are cost burdened. Home ownership is increasingly out of reach in the greater Los Angeles area as our housing market continues to recover from the housing crisis. While the median home value in U.S. is $296,400. The median home value in Torrance is a whooping $713,000. Palos Verdes, $968,200. Redondo Beach, $736,100. Manhattan Beach, $1,400,000. Hawthorne, $465,700. And Inglewood, $385,900. This means that the cost of a down payment is rising, keeping home ownership rates in Los Angeles low. While the home ownership rate nationally is 65%, it is only 56% in Torrance, only 49.9% in Redondo Beach, and only 27% in Hawthorne, and only 37% in Inglewood. In short, certainly, affordable housing opportunities are nowhere to be found for millions of households in this country, including far too many households right here in Torrance and surrounding cities. Moreover, as our population ages, the housing security of our elderly population is of growing importance, and our housing stock is unprepared to meet the needs of a growing senior population. According to a study from Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies, the nationwide population of 65 to 74-year-olds is projected to climb from 21.7 million in 2010 to 32.8 million in 2020, and then to 38.6 million in 2030. The study also points out that much of the nation's existing housing inventory lacks basic accessibility features, preventing older adults with disabilities from living safely and comfortably in their homes. Despite these challenges, we have reason to be optimistic. Cities like Torrance have recognized the importance of these housing issues and have made important progress, particularly when it comes to senior housing. Torrance has prioritized the building of more senior housing after determining that the demand for assisted living centers was starting to outpace the existing supply. Here in Torrance, Torrance has made it a priority to address veteran homelessness. In fact, in the area, in this entire region, we have all of our cities and localities working to do what they can about homeless veterans. In fact, I was very pleased to attend the grand opening of Vermont Villas about a year ago, a 79-unit development in Harbor Gateway that provides housing for formerly homeless veterans as well as formerly homeless seniors. This development was financed with a combination of low-income housing tax credits and private investment, and involved effective partnerships between government, private, and nonprofit organizations. This kind of progress is so important because it honors the contributions of those who have fought bravely for our country, and it caters to the housing needs of our most vulnerable residents. And so, these are the kinds of efforts that have helped the South Bay Harbor area communities reduce veteran homelessness. And I must do a shout out because the organization here, the South Bay Coalition to End Homelessness, is on it. They've paid attention, they've worked on homelessness, and they've done a great job here. And I'm going to show you what has happened. Here in the South Bay Harbor area, these communities have reduced veteran homelessness by a dramatic 35% between 2015 and 2016. In fact, this decrease has brought the South Bay Harbor area communities much closer to functionally ending veteran homelessness, with an estimated 37 homeless veterans still in the area, down from 575 in 2015. Give them a big round of applause. That's something to be very proud of. But there's more work to be done, as the overall rate of homelessness in the South Bay Harbor area increased by 22% between 2015 and 2016. And as I have said time and time again, even if it's only one of our veterans living on the streets, that's one too many, and that's unacceptable. Thank you. We need to harness the success of these positive stories to continue to push local, state, and federal lawmakers to prioritize investment into affordable housing. But it will not be easy. Not only is the scope of the challenge tremendous for all of the reasons I've discussed, but we have major political battles to fight in Congress to continue to make efforts to cut critical housing programs and undermine the mission of the Department of Housing and Urban Development is something that we're very aware of. Ladies and gentlemen, I pay a lot of attention to this area because I'm the ranking member of the House Financial Services Committee, and I will continue to present solutions and fight for the funding and reforms that we need to meet these challenges head on. So, with that, I'm just going to mention to you that because of what happened in 2008 with the subprime meltdown and the recession, almost depression that we had, we came up with some reforms that are known as the Dodd-Frank reforms. And so I have the responsibility to try and help implement these reforms. Now, these reforms are not appreciated, are not liked by many in our society. When you hear a lot of talk about Wall Street, you have to understand that what we're doing in these reforms will literally take money out of their pockets, and they're not happy about that. And so I'm constantly challenging some of the biggest financial institutions in this country about their practices. We learned a lot as we fought through that crisis about how many folks get tricked into signing on the dotted line for mortgages they can't afford. We had mortgages that were not absolutely vetted, where people said, you know, they didn't need to know that much about your income. We had a lot of fraud that went on, where people helped folks to make up income so that they could give them those mortgages. They came up with all of these exotic products, no down payment, interest only, and on and on and on. And it put a lot of homeowners in terrible shape. Thousands lost their homes in many areas of this country. And Dodd-Frank is designed to not allow that ever to happen again, along with some other portions of Dodd-Frank, like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is central to the reforms that we're doing. Because what happened during this crisis is all of our oversight agencies that were supposed to be not only looking out for the safety in our systems, they were supposed to be looking out for consumers, but nobody was taking care of consumers. And now we have this Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that's returned millions of dollars, billions now, I think it's $11 billion, back to consumers that were victims of fraud, being cheated in so many ways, whether it's automobile dealers, payday loans, you name it. And so his name is Mr. Cordray. You'll hear a lot about him because they're after him. They're going to get him. They want him out. They say he has too much power, and he does. He's the single director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and it was organized in that fashion so that he wouldn't have to go before the Appropriations Committee and they would tie him up and not give the appropriations that's needed for him to do his job. Or they didn't want a single director. They want a commission that could tie his hands. And so when we did the Dodd-Frank legislation, we made sure that he was protected, and that has not set well with Wall Street and a lot of other very special interests. And so you're going to hear a lot about Dodd-Frank. You're going to hear a lot about Cordray and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And I want you to listen very carefully, because some of these issues are not paid attention to. And a lot of people don't know where their harm and their hurt is coming from. And so I want you to pay attention so that you will be able to join in whatever struggles there are to ensure that the citizens of this country are treated fairly, and that they're not ripped off, and that we get rid of fraud, and people don't have to suffer because nobody's looking out for them. A little bit about transportation. It's a little bit better story. I'm proud to report that about 1 year ago, Congress passed a bipartisan, multi-year transportation bill to bring our nation's transportation system into the 21st century. The bill was called Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, or the FAST Act for short, H.R. 22, in the 114th Congress. The final conference report passed the House in December of 2015 by an overwhelming bipartisan vote of 359 to 65, and then it was signed into law by President Obama. See, for those who say there's no partisan work every now and then, it is. The FAST Act provides funding for investments in roads, bridges, and mass transit systems, and creates good-paying jobs which cannot be outsourced. The final conference report for the bill provides $281 billion in guaranteed funding for highway, bridge, public transit, and transportation safety over 5 years. Although this conference report was not perfect, and I did not agree with every provision, I voted in favor of it because I believe it is important that we move forward with a multi-year transportation program that will repair our dilapidated infrastructure and invest in safe, reliable roads, bridges, and transit systems. Among